So the premise is that there's a civil war. A civil war is broken out in the United States between, on one hand, the federal forces, and on the other hand, the Western secessionist forces of California and Texas. A group of four war journalists, it's two journalists and two war photographers. They make their way from New York City to Washington, D.C. to try to interview the president before the Capitol falls. This is Alex Garland's Civil War. Rick, what say you?
I like going into a film not knowing what it's going to be. I like a film that surprises and takes chances, but I also get upset when a film doesn't have when a film doesn't have a strong story and is made up more of ideas that are left more for the audience to flesh out. When I went to see Civil War last year, when it was in theaters, I wasn't sure what to expect. I knew we were close to the end of the Biden administration, and I guess we were going into Ukraine at that moment. Ukraine and Russia were, I don't mean us going into Ukraine, but Russia was invading Ukraine. It's hard to remember the timeline, but there was the sense that the world was starting to have even more serious problems than what it's usually used to. And I watched this film knowing that Alex Garland, had done Ex Machina, which I really, really enjoyed, really admired, and took a lot from. Annihilation was a film he did a couple years later that didn't work for me, and I haven't seen a lot of his other stuff, although he's a writer of some note, having done Danny Boyle's The Beach and Boyle's 28 days later or 28 weeks later or 28 months later, whatever the fuck those zombie films are. He had a strong hand in those. That being said, I felt like I was watching something. The further I went along with it, the more I felt that the film was relying on tropes and not necessarily cliches, but like standard story elements that we had seen in the past, culminating with an ending that I thought could have gone one of two ways, but was only going to go one of two ways. We'll get to that in a little bit, because obviously we have to discuss that. I think it's an important aspect of the film and its success or failure. I'm really interested in hearing your view on this, because after watching the film again last night, I was hoping that the weight of what was going on in my country at this moment would define the viewing a little bit better. Well, it made it more difficult, because it made it more of a cop-out in a way. We've talked in the past about major studio films and the quality of them. This is a well-made film. It's beautifully shot, and there are images in it that are really quite breathtaking. But if you don't handle the material well, and I think this is the hardest type of material to deal with, because it's very divisive. I feel like there's a half a movie here, and the fact that we don't really understand. We're shown a world that is, a country at least, that is disintegrating. we're not given a true perspective on the people living in that country and what it's doing to them. Maybe that's not the film he was trying to make. Maybe he was just trying to make a film about journalists trying to maintain what little bit of their soul they have left after years of seeing, blood in the streets, people being billy clubbed, or a man being placed in a tire and lit on fire. If that's the case, then even in that instance, I think the film falls short of really giving us a good idea of who these journalists are. So that's my take on it, and we'll break down specific scenes, and either we're gonna be like hand in hand agreeing on this thing, or you and I are gonna argue the fuck out of this movie. I don't know if it can go any other way. So I'm really interested in hearing your point of view.
Someone recently had told me about it, and they said, "Oh, Civil War," and I'm thinking fucking like Confederate, like the old Confederate, the old Confederacy.
Naturally.
I wasn't thinking about the new Confederacy or any of those, the newest version. I was thinking about the like retro Civil War, and then they're like, no, and I said, well, and I go, well, is it? Does it take place now, or does it take place in the 19th century? And when it's going to take place now, it's Alex Garland. I said, oh, interesting. Okay, so then I asked you about it, and then you said it was a fucking piece of shit.
Did I go that far? Did I say that was?
No, I don't. No, that's not a quote. But I was still curious. I saw the trailer and I said, well, and I watched it, and it was intense. It was, in many ways, it has its moments of being a ride, Yeah. And I think what you just said. Now you said journalists trying to maintain their soul. I think that's what it wants to be. I think that's really what it wants to be. I think at the same time, I think it's an indictment of media. But it's an indictment of media that's baked inside a civil war conflict at home. And so in that sense, I don't know if it's, like a marketing issue. And what I mean by that is like, well, is it about a civil war, or is just a civil war the backdrop? Is Star Wars about fucking metachlorians and fucking whatever other like lore? Or at its core, is it about the rebellion against the Empire? And all this other stuff is just kind of world building in order to tell that story. Is Game of Thrones about? Is it about fucking the White Walkers, or is it really just about ambition, politics, environmental threats, etc.? I think Star Wars and Game of Thrones do a good job of having a theme or a set of themes that it wants to work with, and creating a world that's laid out on top of that. This feels a little bit like the journalist stuff is buried under the idea of the Civil War, even though the journalists are the ones that are carrying us through the story, doing their journalist stuff throughout the story. I just feel like there is a kind of lack of focus, and you call the story, the script is called Civil War. The movie is Civil War, and on one hand, you could say, well, is there all this conflict within the journalists about their own place in the war, and therefore they have like a metaphor of a civil war within themselves, because they themselves are conflicted? Is there a conflict between them in terms of how they should approach this conflict? If so, it's not enough. So it just kind of becomes, it's like almost like it doesn't have a shape to it to me.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily want it to be very like overly clear as to what's happening necessarily. I don't have a problem with that. I just think that the journalist aspect, the journalist finding or preserving their soul set within an environment of a civil war, I think just from a generalized fucking script standpoint, and it's not like I'm this fucking asshole who's like, oh, I know how to fucking write scripts so well that my fucking 10 scripts that fucking became movies, like, this is how I would have done it. I'm not doing that. But there's a moment when, I don't know if it's a montage or what it is, but they do touch on these other conflicts abroad where, yeah, there's someone like being lit on. He's like, the tire is placed over him. So he's like hula hooped inside this fucking tire, and then he's lit on fire, this guy. And it's like, okay, now the conflicts, these things that have been out there are now here at home. How do you react to that as a journalist and as a photojournalist? And you're in the war zone, but the war zone is your backyard, so to speak, right? I think that connection, had that been better established, I think it would have been a stronger movie. What you end up with is a kind of like family road trip, where you have these generations of journalists. You have an older veteran reporter. You have, who's basically like the grandfather. You have you have Kirsten Dunst and Wagner Moura. He's the, like, it's like the mom and dad, and then you have this young freelance photojournalist.
See, didn't that feel
like,
just obvious to you? And just like paint by numbers and just...
it does feel obvious.
Yeah.
But
insultingly obvious, I would say. Sorry, go ahead.
It does feel obvious, but the problem is that it's like, I don't feel that it's really explored. It's not explored, and it's not, because you could take something that's obvious and then you could
oh yeah, it's all about the execution. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, you could fuck with it. You can. There are moments when the older journalist is like, this is fucking this is dumb what we're doing here in particular moments. And then you have the young girl who's like, I've never felt so alive. And then you have the parents who are basically fucking angry. So you do have a definitely like fucking family dynamic. But I feel like all of that in a weird way just becomes muddy in the Civil War stuff. So I think in a weird way, I think I would have preferred to know even less and to just be like, just give me a fucking found footage, like first person fucking like collection of all these encounters, to where I'm just like, what the fuck am I watching? This is fucking crazy. And you can only gather the information that you're gathering as the person is recording, so to speak, something like that. Versus, I feel like it's trying to do two different things. This film. What we know is that the United States is in a civil war scenario. We know that because of the title. We know that the president is serving a third term. So that tells us something. In the United States, you cannot serve a third consecutive term. No, you can't serve a third term at all.
At all.
Anymore. FDR was an exception.
Well, I think they made the rule because of FDR.
They made the rule because of him serving 4 terms.
Yeah. Or at least elected to 4th term. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
The president in this film dissolved the FBI. So that tells you something. Mm-hmm. The president has performed airstrikes against U.S. civilians.
Yeah.
That tells you something. So now you have secession, you have California, the state of California and the state of Texas as the Western forces, and then you have a secessionist movement in the state of Florida. So let's address what are things that are obvious. Number one, the implausibility. And Garland's, I saw an interview where Garland addressed this as it was addressed to him. He responded to this. So California is in this scenario allied with Texas. California is a liberal blue state on the Pacific coast. Texas is a conservative red state in the western part of the American South. It is highly implausible that ideologically and culturally these two states would join forces in order to fight an authoritarian federal government. In an interview, Alex Garland said that he was aware of these differences, but his comment was that it shows that they would join forces shows how big the threat is, because they would, and this, remember the movie came out, and you talked about Russia, Ukraine, I think Russia invaded Ukraine in 22, this latest version of it.
Mm-hmm.
The movie came out in 24, right?
April of 24, yeah.
And according to Alex Garland, he said that his thinking was that if Texas and California were to join forces against this authoritarian federal government, each state, not each side, but each California and Texas as communities felt that the threat is so great that they could put aside their own differences to join forces. And I think that that's incredibly fucking naive.
Well, I mean, we're talking about cliches here. I mean, and it's obviously the enemy of my enemy is my.
I don't think that's a cliche.
No, what I'm saying about it's the cliche is the enemy of my enemy is my ally, is my friend. Mm-hmm. So that's the cliche that I'm talking about. That Garland is, and I agree with you. The differences between Texas and California are so are so vast that it really does offend any kind of sensibilities that you have going in, and it that part makes it very difficult. But I think part of the real problem of the film is there's really no context. There's no understanding of it. This idea of a president serving a third term and uh, a president unleashing firepower on its own citizens. This is just brought up in a conversation where the older veteran news reporter Sammy, the writer, is just throwing out ideas on what the possible interview will be. It's almost like a throwaway. It gives you insight into what's going on, but I really don't feel like there's a lot of context in this movie in creating this scenario and creating what's happening, why it's happening, and how people are reacting. In some cases, you have people, kidnapping, murdering, torturing, looters, but a few hours away, you have a small town that's just pretending that nothing is happening. Although Garland shifts his camera slightly to show that there are people on roofs and there is a tension within all of this. The
characters also refer to that.
Yeah. The news reporter, subtly look. Here's, take a drag off the cigarette and look around. But then there's, I'm with you where less would have been more if they had gone even less. Or, my opinion is, give me a better explanation. Because if that's the case, because right now you're alluding to what's going on, which kind of forces the hand. Now, if you what was that?
These are implicit in the film. These things are stated in the film, so they're explicitly stated, but the rest is implicit. Like, you understand that if a president is serving a third term, if the president dissolved the FBI and has performed or is interested in performing airstrikes on U.S. civilians, like, you understand that now this person is no longer a U.S. president who is acting within the confines of the Constitution. So you know that now, because of that, states have rebelled. So then my question to you is, like, what? Because I know Alex Garland said, like, he wasn't really interested in, like, spelling it out. So what more do you want beyond what's already implicit there?
I want the people.
What does that mean?
I want to see how it affects the people living in these communities, and you get a small version of a camp. And see, I think the thing that really bothers me about the film is that Garland photographs it too beautifully and uses slow motion too abundantly, so as to create this. There's this idea that there's beauty even in hardship and horror, and there's the camera captures that. There's a moment where a main character has been shot and is dying in the backseat of a car, and they're driving through what looks like a raging inferno, a raging forest that's been set on fire, and embers are slowly pouring down from the sky, and it's a very beautiful image.
Yeah,
but I'm like, fuck you, fuck you for doing that.
There's like sun flare, what's before dusk in the lens. It's an interesting point you bring up, because it's that goes back into the journalist kind of side of the movie, where it's like, and especially if you have a photojournalist and you have two photographers, that's they're looking for these beautiful images of horror, and we're going to be pivoting back and forth between the journalist movie and the Civil War movie. But to go into the journalist lane, it's there is definitely an element of them as kind of like storm chasers. They reminded me of. They're chasing conflict, and they're out there to shoot it, with quotes. They shoot people getting shot, and at what point when you're hiding behind that lens, when does the journalist begin and when does it end? When does the just civilian begin and when does it end? And I think there's a deeper indictment on media, on Hollywood, and on social media there, to be found. Behind the lens and in front of the screen. Yeah. And I think there is something that he wants Alex Garland to touch on that involves information becoming entertainment becoming exploitation, potentially. The idea of, is there still a neutrality to information anymore? And the idea of irresponsibility in the field can potentially lead to irresponsibility on the screen or on your phone, or on the page, or however you're digesting it, or receiving it. I think that those things, the seeds were there, but I think it's kind of like the one, two wheels are in the fucking Civil War stuff, which pulls a lot of focus because that's what it is. But at the same time, the struggles of these journalists are in the other lane, but it's very muddy. And there seems to be this thing of like, well, I'm going to make a movie that really doesn't have a message, but it does. But I'm going to try to make it seem like it doesn't have a message. And I'm going to give you not a lot of information, which I personally, okay, fine. But this is just a scenario. We're going through it. The goal is to get from New York City, 4 journalists, New York City to Washington, D.C. to interview the president. And we're just going to hit all these fucking like scary scenarios on the way. And we'll touch on different aspects of these generations and how they respond to conflict, and how the older female photographer's time, basically like her sun sets while the younger female photographer's sun rises. And that's it. So it is a messy movie when it comes to that.
So if that's the case, do you think that there's too much story for one film here, or it's too much story for this particular filmmaker to handle? Because you can tell a story with a number of different plot elements and character studies and trying to juggle all this, and I'm sure there are relationships like this in real life, and there would be they would occur somewhat in this manner. But I think like so much of it is obvious. Like, yeah, Kirsten Dunst finds this young, maybe 20 or 30 years younger photojournalist who wants to become a war journalist and idolizes her and knows her background. And, I think that's a little bit too simplistic for a movie, because it comes down to, and I knew this watching it, it was going to come down to one thing. Either Kirsten Dunst as Lee was going to die in the process of this mission, of this journalistic mission, or the young girl Kirsten Dunst was going to die and validate the young girl. Her death was going to validate her and push her into the forefront of photojournalism and what it means to be a war journalist. Or the young girl was going to die and extinguish what was left of Lee's humanity and her dedication to the work, to the art, to the purpose of capturing these images. And it happened. It was obvious to me. And I saw it, and I saw it, and I was like, okay, here we go. Here it comes. And I was just kind of bored by it, because these are stories that I've been told numerous times, and I can't remember the last time a story like this actually did work for me. If I really sat down and started thinking about it and really going through my mind, maybe I could find a story that worked in that respect. A certain element of journalistic integrity, like All the President's Men, or something, or Network, yeah. But it doesn't. I think. Was that?
Go ahead.
No, but I mean, with this film, I'm seeing very obvious plot points, and a manipulation of you as the viewer with really beautiful images. I mean, there's a moment when all of them have driven not into a compound, but I guess near a home, and there's a sniper in the home, and
yeah, it's like a farmhouse.
Yeah, it's a farmhouse. They've shot out some Christmas decorations, which is there's a purpose there. But Lee and the young girl both are lying on the ground with a few feet between them, and Garland focuses on each of them, and then the background slowly becomes out of focus, where the foreground becomes into focus, and you see the flowers growing in the grass. And then he switches angles and sees it from the young girl's perspective, doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, don't manipulate me with images that with beauty.
Don't give me your fucking foreshadowing, motherfucker.
Yeah, maybe. Oh. I just felt like, come on, man, you're this is a little bit, you know what, truth be told, I felt it was just a bit too obvious in a film that should have went for more with more randomness of war. I think it's too predictable, yeah.
Because you felt it was too obvious, but at the same time you didn't feel that there was enough context.
No, what I said was go one way or the other, but don't go in the middle without either give me the context or go completely batshit nuts where I don't know what the fuck is happening. Yeah, and I think a batshit movie would have made it better, because it would have captured more the intensity and randomness and chaos of war, which would have been the better choice. But when I say the context, it's because he's teasing us with context. He's giving some context and then pulling back and not exploring it, which just don't do it. Give me a movie where everything is just fucking nuts and there's no way of really understanding what the hell's going on, except to say that our country is in the midst of self-destruction. That would have been a better movie.
right. Or and amidst all that chaos, maybe we're trying to make sense of it as they are, but maybe still shots from their photography kind of gives you a certain kind of through line, where you can start to connect dots. But there's a tension between the lived like day-to-day fucking war at home experience versus, or maybe it doesn't make sense, but it's a different perspective. It's like, maybe that in itself is a kind of like a sense of denial or a sense of propaganda. If the pictures are flowers or the pictures are beauty, even though it's war journalism, or the pictures are a certain narrative, but the reality on the day-to-day that isn't coming out in these photos that we'd be presented with, they're telling the opposite story. That already tells you something else. That tells you that there is a story being told within the story in terms of how stuff is presented to people outside. Yeah, I mean, like there's that. If we go back into the Civil War lane, Northern California and Southern California are also very different.
Yeah.
So the idea of like a Texas California thing, again, implausible. The idea that 4 journalists would actually make it to DC, it's like there was a lot of people that wanted to go to Woodstock that were on the road that they never made it. They never made it there. They got fucking stuck in the mud. They got stuck in traffic, whatever it was. So the idea, because they do get there, and it's very implausible. It just seems, it's like, yeah, we know that you need to do the movie, but it's such a direct, like, their goal becomes what happens. And there is conflict in between, obviously, and there's change, but at the same time, it's, in that sense, I do agree with the way you're framing of it, is that it's kind of like, well, we understand from the beginning that the young female character, that the older female character doesn't really want tagging along, is going to most likely, like, inherit her role. Like you said,
or be martyred, or die. Yeah. Huh? She's either going to inherit the role, or she's going to die, which is either going to elevate the older journalist and help her find her mojo again, or whatever, her fucking photograph, or it's going to sink her further into the depression of what she spent her life doing.
And that ends up happening. And the goal is to get to the president. So the idea that they would make it to DC at all, be embedded with these forces that are going after the president, and be like given this fucking, when I go, you go, stay right fucking behind me, like in the fucking like White House. That they would have actual access to the president, and that they would be there to document the extrajudicial execution of the president. Fucking spoiler alert. For a movie that came out yesterday. I don't care. That they would be there to document that is also implausible. Also, if the Western forces in this scenario viewed the president in this scenario as a dictator, they would want cultural continuity of the United States. They wouldn't destroy monuments unnecessarily. They would want international legitimacy as a legitimate force, they most likely would want to take the president alive so that he could be tried for war crimes. So this idea of like these just randos that fucking make it in and they just kill the president then and there. It seemed for this scenario, obviously if you put it in a different scenario and it's like, if it's already a fucking like, maybe a war-torn area, but if this is like, the whole idea is that now the United States has lost legitimacy because of this dictator. And so you have forces that rise up against him to reestablish a form of legitimacy. It doesn't make sense as a strategy to do that, as a long-term strategy. Not to mention like logistical fucking issues in terms of like war effort. Like think of a civil war scenario in the United States, like the modern.
Sure.
If the U.S. president were to become a dictator, if he were to consolidate power, erode civil liberties, dismantle federal agencies, try to imagine such a thing.
Let's go with that.
Elections ultimately suspended, the mass surveillance, the mass deportations, detentions, etc. You would have a buildup. You would have mass protests. You could potentially have state governors fighting back in whatever way they could. Then you could potentially start to get military leadership divided, right?
Yeah.
Then what's going to happen? Like, you would have basically, if the president were, let's say, Republican, pretend. You would basically end up with like blue state coalitions or unions. That's more likely than, if anything, Texas, there's more historical to look at and say, well, Texas will just secede and just try to be its own shit. Because it's all fucking Lone Star. If it doesn't just fucking like, join the fucking red state, South, Midwest, Deep South fucking federal coalition. Am I boring you?
No.
Like Civil War makes me yawn. Blue state fucking coalitions, the Pacific Coast, Washington State, Oregon, California. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm listening.
You sound like you're in pain.
Well, the world is in pain. I'm disgusted with everything right now. I'm like, yeah. It has a crap, you know? I mean, I've never, we've talked a little bit about this. I've been a cynic and a pessimist for a long time, but being face to face with it and seeing it in your daily life and turning on the news and not being able to get away from it and no longer being able to look at your neighbors and family with the same eye, because it's quite possible that they're not just of a different political mindset of yours. They're of a different humanitarian mindset. So yeah, I'm breathing a little bit heavier right now. Yeah. I'm contemplating shit that I never thought I was going to have to contemplate. That's my naivete.
I mean, these are things that we take for granted. You know, we've always been that society that's like, well, not here.
And that's a big part of the U.S. mentality is that's not here. That happens other places. That's not. I remember, and I don't know if I told you this. We didn't know each other at the time, but when I woke up on September 11th, 2001, and I turned on the TV and I saw that second plane hit, and what bothered me the most over the next couple of days was, I mean, obviously seeing a terrorist attack, obviously seeing people die, but hearing people talk about How could this happen to us?
Right.
And, you know, not to say that we deserve it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do you imagine that you are immune to any of this? How do you imagine that you should be, that what that implies is that this happens in other places of the world, and that's okay.
Of course.
But the fact that it's happening here, yeah. And that was the thing that was most troubling for me, because it was coming to terms with the mentality that we are somehow above the danger. And it was the kind of thing where you have to take a step back, and you have to look at your country. You have to look at its history, and you have to look at other countries, and you have to see what they're capable of. And what it ultimately comes down to is, how much faith do I have in humanity, in the species? And I find myself, I find it more and more difficult to have that kind of faith. And I think that kind of faith is necessary to live life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not yawning. I'm beating the shit out of myself in my own head.
Yeah. Let's play a war game.
Okay, let's party.
Get out a map of the US.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on the table.
Yeah.
Get some thumbtacks, some red ones and some blue ones, and let's pretend that we're gonna look at this not like Alex Garland, but let's look at it as if it were actually gonna happen. Put a pin in every fucking red state. Put a pin in every blue state. And obviously, it's like you've got on the West Coast, you have 3 pins. You have pins in fucking New England and New York. You have a pin in Illinois. And then you have little small pins in little pockets like Austin, Texas, or Atlanta, other places. But the vast majority is fucking red. So how would a civil war look, right? Or that scenario. You're going to have these coalitions. You're going to have, let's say, the play with it also. Play with it with language models. Play with it with AI. Ask it what it would do. Game it out. You're going to have states in that scenario that would basically refuse to remit federal taxes if they felt that they were pushed that far.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe
Gavin Newsom has alluded to that.
New York State and New England, right? Form a East Coast Union or Northeast or whatever. Maybe there's a Pacific Union instead of, or maybe those are the so-called Western forces. Those places could become sanctuaries where people flee. Maybe you're going to see military defections.
Yeah.
National Guard units like side with their fucking like the statewide. Blue states, maybe they're going to have more international alliance. West Coast, Mexico, Canada, Asia. East Coast, maybe Canada, EU. The blue states are going to have ports, which, I mean, the Navy could fuck with. But they're going to have ports, population, GDP. Red states, isolated internationally, but they're going to have what? Military logistics.
Yeah.
They're going to have fucking militias, surveillance.
Yeah.
They're going to have fucking land, suppression strategy, guns, airstrikes. China and Russia are going to fucking potentially like intervene with cyber shit. You've got militias in Idaho, Michigan, etc. Eastern California and Orange County are red. Are you going to have insurgency in those battleground purple places? It's not going to look like the Civil War looked before. And it's not necessarily going to be forces from California are gonna fucking march on fucking Washington D.C.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, I mean, the short term, like, federal forces have advantages. Long term advantages. I mean, if a federal U.S. force were isolated internationally, and cut off from blue state money, like, what is that? How do they sustain themselves economically? Especially, like, you're gonna fucking have, you're gonna have an ultimate, like, hyperinflated fucking U.S. dollar without foreign investors in U.S. bonds. So, I mean, the federal red state government would have military and logistics, but what happens to, and if in that scenario it was like, if there were immigration issues the way there are now, does that mean that now you have to rely on slave labor for agriculture?
Well, they kind of have alluded to that, haven't they? That has been something that's come up in the news lately. People don't necessarily recognize it as slave labor. I mean, the people who see no problem with it, but that's the story that I heard.
Yeah, owner responsibility, etc. Yeah.
Owner responsibility. Wow. Yeah.
So it looks a little bit simplified in terms of the movie. And I mean, like, if for those of you who maybe you understand Warcraft, maybe you do your own analysis and come up with how you think it would be and how different it is from, I mean, the majority, let's say, we're just all speculating because we don't know anything.
Well, let's get that, make that very clear. We don't know anything.
Obviously.
But
it is very obvious.
Yeah.
Like, it's like fucking Lieutenant Colonel Ramos, fucking his analysis of fucking, no, we're just looking at political lines and talking about things that a layman would already know.
Yeah.
Hello, you there?
I'm here.
PBR Street Gang. And this is just for not fun, but like for fun, speculating on fucking how it would look based on the political layout and what one imagines would happen if one were to rewrite this fucking thing for Alex Garland, who himself was just doing something creative. The fact is, it's fucked. And in the film, just between New York City, and Washington, D.C., there are a lot of these situations. There's a situation you described, the town where
they drive into where like time they call it a twilight zone, like the town, the time forgot.
All American fucking town. What does all American mean? And so they're down in this fucking Main Street area or whatever, and they go into a shop, and this like hipster kind of chick is just like hanging out, and one of the journalists is like, "You are aware that there's this like major civil war happening outside?" And she's like, "Yeah, we try to stay out." And yeah, there are snipers basically posted on the rooftops. How much could you potentially at that point like stay out? Because that like in today's age, that relies that's so much fucking self-sufficiency that it would take. In terms of like power grid, water, just shipment of goods, fucking, again, all the logistical stuff.
Yeah, just restocking your grocery stores. I mean, goddamn, come on.
Right.
Highways.
Right. And military is going to use up a lot of logistical shit. And if, like, who the fuck is going to want to be a trucker? Going through battlegrounds. So then, okay, are you going to send shit? Like, are there no fly? Like, what are the fly zones like? Like, if we're talking about cargo, like planes. How are you going to do it? Like, if not enough stuff is coming from California going across, if there are other truckers aren't taking it, okay, trains. Well, is it even going from fucking like the shit that's going from? Look, all this shit comes from China, all these goods, and they come to California. They come to the ports here.
Yeah, yes they do.
And they have to make their way across the fucking country.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? So how feasible is it to keep out? Like what? Like how normal is this little normal town? Another scenario is, yeah, they're driving and then there's this sniper and there are Christmas ornaments along the side of the road that's passing in front of the house that's set back from the road at a distance. And the sniper's shooting at whoever passes by. And there are two soldiers, militiamen, we're not sure. They're undercover, lying prone, trying to locate like where in the house the sniper is so they can take him out. They've got like dyed hair, painted nails. It becomes this kind of thing where it's like, who the fuck knows? Different so-called sides are wearing fatigues. This is just, we're getting creative with our shit. It doesn't fucking matter. The idea is like, who is this person? What side is he on, kind of thing? And the guy's like, what's happening? They're shooting at us. Okay, that's all you need to fucking know, stupid.
I remember that, yeah. God damn.
And that does lend itself to a kind of like, it is a kind of shoot first, ask questions later, because you don't know who the fuck is who. And there's another scene where they join forces with these malicious guys. They look like, you know who the Boogaloo Boys are?
No.
It's a militia where they wear Hawaiian shirts and tactical gear.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I thought you were getting into something else. Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about now. I know what scene you're talking about now.
Yeah, they're into like a civil war, a coming civil war, and so they'll use like an igloo, like a big igloo, boogaloo.
Mm-hmm.
The boogaloo is like a civil war, or kind of like a when shit hits the fan scenario. It's like big luau, so then they'll have like Hawaiian. If you look at the flag, it's like black and white American flag. The igloo is instead of the stars. One of the stripes is like a red and white, like tropical kind of Hawaiian pattern. Okay. So it's like big igloo, big luau, boogaloo. So that's like the symbolism, the iconography. So these guys in this scenario are shooting like we're assuming they're fighting with federal forces. One of them is like, I need help. They just shoot him dead. War crime, kill him, boom. Like they're out there taking pictures of all this shit, and this is like, you're in the shit. You're there. You're now like in a scenario where, just like whatever country it was where they were setting people on fire, You are now in a war where you're there to take pictures and you're now taking pictures of war crimes and atrocities. It's like, do these people want those pictures getting out? Is it to the level where they just don't give a mad fuck? Or is it like, hey, like, no, they need to die because these people are going to tell others potentially what we're doing. Who knows?
You can't really know.
Right. Probably the most striking scene. Well, two of the most striking scenes to me are I guess top three. One would be there's a bomber. She's carrying the American flag. Blonde white woman with a bomb strapped to her backpack or whatever, carrying an American flag. People are there in line waiting for water, and it's like that. That's early on in the film, and that just puts you in the place of like, oh yeah, shit is like, this is not the America that everyone pictures in terms of when they think of war-torn areas out there. This is now the blowback has come. The boomerang has come back. The wars, the exported wars, have now come back. But there's a scene where they're trying to make it to Washington because they're like, oh, we're gonna fucking get to interview the president.
We want the scoop. Yeah, we're trying to get there.
Yeah, they're trying to get that scoop.
Because at the end of the day, it's still a news outlet versus news outlet trying to get the ratings. That's a fundamental thing of news media, of getting that scoop, being able to tell that story, breaking that story.
Assuming that there's still fucking internet in that scenario.
Yeah.
Assuming that there's still fucking that there still are news outlets, because like everything at that point would change. So if you have a big fucking federal government like that that's already dissolved the FBI, you think they're gonna fucking like allow fucking news outlets?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Like at that point, everyone's a fucking everyone is a so-called like independent journalist, and your press badge means shit. And against the federal forces, it's kind of like, well, remember, the journalists that we don't like are enemies of the people. Mm-hmm. So the assumption that a press pass means neutrality to a dictatorial force is naive in and of itself. But we roll with it. So they're trying to get the scoop. They're driving to the fucking. They're trying to get to Washington. Before the Western forces do, and somehow they're gonna fucking be able to knock on the fucking door of the White House and be like, "Hey, knock knock, who's there? The press. The press who." The press is going to fucking interview you before they kill you. Can we come in? No. But, okay, so they're on their way. And then this fucking other, like, SUV or whatever the fuck it is comes, like, barreling behind them.
Mm-hmm. Scaring the shit out of them.
Yeah.
They do.
And it turns out it's fucking two Asian reporters that know the dude Joe.
Go ahead.
All right, so
two Asian drivers.
Yeah, two Asian fucking journalists are in the next car over. They're driving parallel. One of them goes from the window of his car through the window of the other into the other car. What the fuck are you doing? Blah blah. They're laughing. Ha 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 ha. The older journalist is like, what the fuck? The girl, the young freelance photographer girl, is like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go to the other car. So she does, and then the other guy just drives off faster, disappears. Where are they? They get the fucking Kirsten Dunst car is fucking. They spin out. They fucking go down into the woods and almost lose control. They have to get back on the road. Where the fuck is this other car? What happened? So then they go. They find the car. Basically, on a driveway of a property, another big like farmhouse area. Car doors are open. Car's empty. What's happening? All right, so they kind of walk inside onto the property. In the distance, you see the back of this fucking big like produce truck or something.
No, it's like a dump truck. Isn't it a dump truck?
Is it a dump truck?
Yeah, I think it's a dump truck.
It's fucking. Well, yeah, it is actually because it tilts. Yeah, so it and there's all these fucking bodies.
Yeah.
And there's a ditch, not a ditch, but a mass grave, basically. And there's lime.
Yeah.
So they can decompose or dissolve or whatever. And now you have these two dudes in fatigues with rifles. And the fucking bodies. And they make the one Asian dude and the young girl get on their knees. So now these other three journalists are like, the two mommy and daddy journalists are like, we have to go. Plus the other Asian dude, they're like, we have to go save them. And then the older dude, who's African American, the grandpa journalist, is like, are you fucking crazy? There's a fucking truckload of bodies. And they're like, no, but we're press.
Yeah. Anything that, whatever they're doing, they don't want seen. That's what he tells them. He's the only one that has any sense in the movie. At certain points. Yeah.
Right. And he says, all my instincts, he says something to the effect that all my instincts say that this means death.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are like, nah. They just shit on him because he's old. So they walk up.
I think they overestimate their own abilities. They're really kind of
protections.
Yeah. They're they still for some reason believe that they're somewhat invincible. This man has seen too, which goes against what's going on in the film, because the Kirsten Dunst character is so PTSD. I mean, I think she gives a pretty good performance for what it is in an underwritten. Yeah, it's a good performance in a badly written film. She does a lot with it because she owns it. She's not indicating. She's not playing up the hopelessness or the tired or the PTSD. You could tell she's a woman who has seen shit that she can't unsee, but recognizes that this is the only thing that she's ever been meant to do. So I like that about her. Now, what you're saying, this scene, go ahead, continue the scene because it ends. Well, go ahead.
So they walk up and they're like, hey, huh? And he's like, who the fuck are you? Because it's two militia guys. The sidekick and the main guy who has like these red sunglasses or whatever. So red sunglasses is like, who the fuck are you? And they're like, oh, they're our colleagues. He's like, what kind of colleagues? And the Joe guy is like, journalists. And it basically becomes this back and forth where it's like, what kind of journalists? Oh, we're here to cover the war, blah, blah, blah.
No, he bullshits him first. He tells him,
Well, first he's like, yeah,
he's trying to hustle the guy, and this is not somebody you want to try to hustle because this guy has all the power.
Don't be cute.
Yeah.
He's like, they're like, why? Because the African American journalist wanted to go through Charlottesville, which, like, the Jews will not replace us, to unite the right, all that shit. He didn't go down there.
No.
It's Kirsten Dunst, the character Joe, and the other Asian journalist. They're down there. So they're having this back and forth. Finally, he's like, well, they're like, we're American. He's like, well, kind of American.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know before, once he says that,
Oh, yeah.
that, like, you fucked up by walking down there. You fucked up.
Yeah.
What, like, you fucked up just by driving through there. What kind of American? Central American? South American? Because this guy's Latino. So he's like, Florida. Okay, Florida is one of the secessionist states in this film, in this scenario. Okay. He looks up the young girl who's on her knees. He's like, where are you from? She's like, Missouri. He's like, Missouri. That's the show me state, right? She's like, yeah. He's like, what does that mean? Why do they? She says she doesn't know. So he's like, okay. What about you? Kirsten Dunst is like, Colorado. He's like, Colorado. He said, see? Colorado, Missouri. That's American. 100%. That's American. That's American. We know what that means. As viewers, we know what that means. Then he fucking looks at the Asian guy. Well, wait, let me rewind. Because at this point, he's like, oh, this guy's your colleague, this guy's your friend. And he already shoots the guy who's on his knees. He shot the one Asian dude dead as fuck, right there. Then he went into all this other stuff. Then now he's looking at the other Asian. He's like, who's that hiding behind you? He's like, where are you from? He's like, just tell me. He points the gun right at him. He's like, tell me where you're from. You speak English? The guy's nodding. Tell me where you're from in clear English. This is Hong Kong. And he's like, oh, China. Boom, blows him away. So now everyone's fucking screaming, and it's like, no, stop. And he's like, fucking stop, blah, 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 blah. And it's reaching this feverish pitch. And so then you have a Deus Ex Machina, where the old journalist dude came with the fucking truck or the SUV, whatever the fuck it is, and boom, slams right into them. Somehow they didn't hear the car fucking barreling towards them. Knocks them into the fucking mass grave, and they have to hightail it out of there. One guy, I don't know if he's a different guy or he just got barely clipped, or I don't know what the fuck, but one guy shoots as they're driving quickly, and then it turns out the old dude got hit in the side and will ultimately die because of that wound. That scene is one of the scenes that does more to really serve as an indictment of media and the kind of like TMZ-ification of fucking of news, which on some level it's always like that, and that's why I talked about this kind of like so-called pipeline of like info, entertainment, exploitation, like because I mean, and this goes back all the way. I mean, like when assholes used to fucking interview cowboys and write all these like fanciful stories about them, romanticized fucking stories about them. When when Hemingway was out there in Europe fucking writing about these different conflicts, also like working for the press, but also being involved.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, if you look at the, like, he was on the right side of history, but it's kind of like, it becomes this thing of like, well, you're in dangerous waters and you're playing a dangerous game and you're there potentially getting in the way, but you want to be treated as you don't want to be touched, but you're in the fucking way. And of course we get it. Like, we want to know what's happening. And in Vietnam, had we not seen those images, like, it's a very double-edged sword. But to me, there are more in those scenes than in the whole film. And in that sense, I think the film is less than the sum of its parts.
I would agree. I would totally agree. It really is all the ingredients to a good cake that doesn't rise. I mean, that's a very simplistic way of saying it, I think. But I mean, the acting is there. The cinematography is there. The production design is beautiful, but it really doesn't come together as a story that makes you. It doesn't really. I don't see that in our world. I see something different, and in many cases worse. I was watching this movie last night, and I couldn't help but think of the current administration and everything that's going on right now. And I was wondering, are we a few months away from this kind of thing? Or something to this effect? Perhaps, but not like this. I don't see it going down like this. This is a little bit too pat. This is a little bit too easy. And I don't. I think in a weird way it kind of diminishes it. It's a noble effort because it's something that's very. It's very timely, and there is a statement that's trying to be made, and I think it's an important statement. But the execution just doesn't come together to make it a compelling. The film itself isn't compelling in that regard. I think as you watch it, you make it a better film in your head as you're watching it than anything that's being portrayed on screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, and we've talked. You've said those same words for other films that kind of fumbled the same way. Yeah, I mean, it has the moments. It does show the loss of humanity, the callousness that they develop. The idea of, well, he makes it to the fucking president finally, and he's like, I just need I need a statement. And the president's like, please don't let them kill me, or something along those lines.
Yeah, please don't let them kill me. And he says, that'll do.
And that'll do. And it's such, like, it's so matter of fact, where, it's the idea of, and this is pretend a Walter Cronkite, and we're also romanticizing it. We're putting it in all this stuff, right? Or a Dan Rather, or
sure, the big names.
Someone of someone who really of that stature, who is of that old school where they take the job, at least so it seems, extremely seriously. Imagine that person being in the White House at basically this climax of the Civil War, of an American second Civil War, and you know that you're going to witness the execution of the president. And you ask for a statement. And there's no fucking like sense of like conflict in terms of like, look, I know this person's a fucking scumbag. I know this person has overstepped, but the idea that the office of the president would not only veer into fucking tyranny, but would also like, at this point, that you would have a president executed this way in the White House. Yes, we've had presidents assassinated before, but this is different. And then it would just be like, that'll do. And that's it. It's not that I'm saying that that's not on some level believable. What does that say about the society? What does that say about the media? And what the media has fucking like become at that point. And that's heavy. And this film just kind of, all right, put the two fucking rabbit ears on your shoelaces, tie them up tight, and walk away. That's it. So it does become this thing of like, well, you're missing pieces here. Alex Garland.
Very much, yeah. It's a great way to say it. It is missing a lot of pieces.
Yeah, because if you're gonna indict, like, that shows, you could really show how fucked up, like, and how callous society has become, to where it's kind of like, oh, this is a fucking, this is just a meme, you know? It's just a TikTok, fucking, please don't let them kill me. It goes viral until tomorrow's the next big fucking execution, and then, that's the thing that sci-fi does so well, is that it makes everything so oppressive and feel so dystopian that you're able to really look at that and say, fuck, this is actually about us.
Yeah, yeah.
This does make it look about us, and we can see that. But if it's going to show that kind of level of callousness, even if it's not a thing of, let's show how it got there necessarily, it's kind of like, well, let's show how far out we are truly, so that there's a normalization of that callousness, so that to us viewers, so that to we, the viewers, see it and we're like, fuck, look how fucking callous they are. Because, like, a few scenes before, you were freaking the fuck out.
Yeah. I mean, are you talking about the Kirsten Dunst character, or just us in general? What do you... The PTSD
well, I mean, at that
moment?
point, yeah, no, the male character is just, that sounded too cutesy. That sounded too like that'll do.
Yeah.
And then I walk away, and the explosion happens in the background, and I'm cool. You know.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag. So definitely there are scenes that are even if the scenes were just like a random playlist of scenes, without a through line, I think even that would be more effective.
Well, there are effective scenes. There are effective. I mean, there are things that this movie does well, and it just doesn't come together as a whole as far as being able to. I mean, this is not entertainment. I don't think you would look at this and say, "Yeah, that was a good time." But it's does this help you? You know, ultimately, what it is does this help you understand the current political situation any better, or the potential for what we may be facing? And I think it kind of plays lip service to it and dances around it without ever really coming to terms with what a civil war would actually be in this country. It would be much worse. It would be much more especially in a politically based civil war. I mean, you could say the original Civil War, came down to slavery and the South secession. And there's a lot of different angles you can take on it from that perspective. But this would be fundamental political, social, and religious beliefs that exist in this country that are so far apart. I was talking to somebody who we were talking about this country, and I was told it's a very diverse country. And I said, yeah, it's a very diverse country, but it's a very segregated country, and it's a very closed-minded, narrow-minded, stick to your own shit and stick to what you know type of country. We don't interact with each other outside of the necessary workforce or what do you call it? Purchasing needs.
Well, even based on, sorry, hold that thought. Like,
go ahead,
let me just jump in to kind of reinforce what you're saying. Like, workforce. That means that you're only people in the same industry are interacting, because it's kind of like, well, that means that if you work in a factory, well, you're around factory workers. You're not hanging out with fucking Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, sure.
Purchasing need. Are you buying a fucking $20 Japanese fucking strawberry from whatever store that is on the west side, or are you fucking shopping at Walmart, or are you shopping at your local farmer's market, or are you shopping at the fucking Superior, or whatever or the little local Mexican market?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's it breaks down even further to where
absolutely.
It's like. So sorry, but yeah. Go ahead.
But that's we are not as diverse and embracing, and the idea of bring me your poor, you're impoverished, you're yearning to be free, bring your songs and we will sing them. That I don't know that that's ever existed. Maybe it did at one point. Maybe it was a little bit more maybe we did care about each other more at one point, but that's certainly not the way it is now.
Was that before or after Columbus? Was that?
Yeah. Well, the point is we're not even trying to figure it out.
No, I mean, it's like the situation is dire, and I get the idea of like, hey, like this is the film I fucking made. This is what it like. There's an argument to be made that it's like, well, I've been like, for example, I've been working on a writing project for years that is not done, and what I wanted originally for it to be is not what it is now, and so because that's just it's become something else, and if and when it's done, it's gonna be what it is, and there are gonna be issues with it because there can be. So
Yeah.
this I could potentially hear Alex Garland say, well, you know, you fucking write a Civil War movie and you do it the way you want to
Yeah.
do it.
But it could,
and that's true.
could it possibly be that this subject matter is far too big for a 90-minute to 2-hour long film? That might be the case.
Sure. That's true.
There's
too.
too much to fit in here. I mean, and there's too much going on, and maybe by following this one, he picked the wrong story to follow. But I don't know what he would have replaced it with.
Right. Yeah, because it's like, well, if you're doing some kind of fucking natural disaster or some kind of other disaster, and you're following journalists and you're looking at how if it's the fucking Texas floods and you can reach out and pull someone who's like hanging on to some fucking tree that's near you or whatever, but instead you're trying to get the right photo, and then ultimately the water takes that person away, and then you go, fuck, fucking blurry. That's just as much an indictment on the fucking on the media, and you could do that. Doing it in a U.S. Civil War, I get it, like the war correspondent thing, like wars abroad, wars at home. This really makes me want to think about fucking the Five Bloods, Spike Lee.
Yeah.
Vietnam, they come back home, and then years later they go back. And it shows the contrast. It shows how, on some level, Delroy Lindo, for example, is still at war. It does a good version of contrasting.
Yeah.
I think Vietnam type of movies, I mean, Dead Presidents, I think is another one. Like that really kind of, they show these two sides, and maybe, like I said before, it's like, well, if you show in one environment and then now you bring the environment home, and it's like, it's almost in a sense like, did they bring the war back home with them? Obviously, like they wouldn't have done that because that's not possible. But it's as if metaphorically they brought the war back, and they brought that callousness. They brought that, you know what I mean? Like,
sure, it's something that should be, yeah.
But that's not, you know, we're dealing with what we got, and so that's what we're talking about. And intense scenes. It does have some intense scenes, and if you put yourself in that fucking place, it's like, fuck.
Sure.
But overall, messy.
Yeah.
And hopefully we are not any of these characters at any point.
Well, we can hope all we want, Sometimes you got to face the reality. I hope this isn't the case. That's all I can say really from there. Hopefully, I don't know.
And to include the woman in that shop who's like, oh, we just try to stay out.
Yeah.
Because that's another version of on some level already having fucking like been a casualty of the war.
Yeah, sure, certainly.
BuyMeACoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. BuyMeACoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This one goes to Cornelius Burrows, a member. Thanks for all you do. Not every movie has a happy ending. We do what we can. We watch. We pay attention. We take care. We do all the fucking Edward R. Murrow fucking take care of yourselves and each other. Good night. Good luck. Blah, blah, blah. Till next time.